you're losing time because you're always stuck in your head overthinking, when in reality that stuff doesn't even really matter and the other person may not have even thought twice about what you said. Hi, welcome back to your regularly scheduled self-reflection. I'm Tash. This is Things We Say in Therapy, a place to feel seen and heard and to learn new things. You'll hear a blend of psychological insight as well as my own personal stories, usually surrounding the more unspoken sides of mental health, things that I don't hear about very much that I think are important to speak about. If this information speaks to your experience, that's amazing. I'm so happy you're here. If not, I hope it's valuable for you in the future. Everyone's story is different and that's completely fine. So on to today's topic. Today we're going to be talking about moral perfectionism. Do you ever feel guilty as if you're not doing enough despite doing your best to be a good person? Do you ever excessively worry about being perceived as doing something wrong or as a bad person? If you are, you might be struggling with moral perfectionism. I did not know that moral perfectionism was a thing until recently, and I am so guilty. It's low-key controlled my life for a while. I am now working on it, so I think it's a valuable thing to be speaking about. Moral perfectionism can lead to depression and anxiety, to burnout, existential dread, and particularly hypervigilance. So let's move on to what moral perfectionism is. So moral perfectionism differs from general perfectionism. I'm sure you've heard the term perfectionism before. Perfectionism usually refers to being hypervigilant about tasks and wanting to complete things perfectly to the point where you're, excessively going over things, worried about submitting assignments because you want it to be perfect. Moral perfectionism is the same idea, but it's applied to your ethical standards for yourself and sometimes for others. But moral perfectionism is essentially trying to maintain a character that is perfectly good all the time, that is ethical and moral with a consistent standard, and you're terrified of being perceived otherwise. It's usually driven by a fear of judgment or moral failure. People who struggle with moral perfectionism usually have a deep discomfort with moral ambiguity and moral imperfection. If you feel like you've done something wrong, this feeling of intense anxiety encroaches and you feel like a terrible person, and it only takes one perceived moral failure to feel this way. So I wanted to speak a little bit about how moral perfectionism is born, how you begin to start feeling this way. And like most adult behaviors, it can be born from childhood experiences. The most significant one in this circumstance would probably be if you had a childhood where there were strict moral codes in the household, or if your parents had a lot of rules for you growing up, and if you deviated from those rules, then you were punished or given the silent treatment or made to feel like you were bad. It could also be born if your parents had conditional love for you. So if their love for you and affection was dependent on whether you had caused them issues or caused them an inconvenience, which, by the way, it is normal for a child to inconvenience their parent. That is the whole point of being a parent. It is abnormal for parents not to go out of their way for their child. The second reason you could become a moral perfectionist is from